Hey guys, what's going on? Tenebris here. Welcome back to the channel. Now, before we get into this one, guys, I just wanted to announce that this is going to be one of the last days you guys are going to be able to pick up my Badlion Client Cape, the one you've seen in my videos. I made a video on it. It has a spiraling black hole in the back. So go to the store, click the link in the description, and buy it if you haven't already, because it is going to be taken off the store very soon, because I am, in fact, getting a new cape, which I'll make an announcement video for when it comes. But yeah, so buy it now. Anyways, let's get right into the video. So about a week ago, I asked for some statistics on Twitter about false bans on Hypixel because I was interested in the topic, but also because I wanted to make a video on it. And I started by asking the simple question, have you ever been false banned on Hypixel? And I added that it's an honest opinion, so no need to lie, and it's just for polling purposes. And an astonishing 39% of the 2,730 votes said that they had been false banned on Hypixel before. Now, when I originally made this poll, I was expecting a much lower percentage. I was expecting around 5 to 10%, maybe up to around 15% of the respondents to say that they've been false banned on Hypixel, and especially with a giant sample size, like near 3,000 players, which isn't actually that big, but I think is definitely big enough to show a representation of what the false ban situation is on Hypixel. Now, obviously, these results could be biased to show that more people are being false banned than is actually being done. Obviously, people can lie about it. We'll talk about all of that later in the video, but pretty much the statistics are that around 39%, that's over 1,000 of the 2,730 votes, said that they've been false banned on Hypixel before. That is incredibly high. That is incredibly high. Now, because those values were incredibly high and way above what I was expecting to see on a similar poll, I decided to look into what exactly was causing the values to be so high. Now, in the comment section, people talked about some of their false bans that they've had, and I read through a bunch of them, and I noticed that there was a trend. A lot of people said that they did get false banned, however, they did get unbanned afterwards. So I decided to delete the poll, and I was like, okay, I need to make another poll, and I need to look at what percentage of the people saying they got false banned were actually unbanned afterwards, meaning that they got false banned, but then their false ban was removed. And I believe that adding an option for yes but unbanned after would strongly or significantly reduce the amount of people who were claiming that they were false banned. I know it was like 39%, but when I added the option, it only went down to around 28% of players still insisting that they were false banned and the ban was never lifted. Now, I understand that on my second poll, the sample size is around 1/3 of what it was on my original poll, but I do not think that's relevant because the total number of people saying that they were false banned, the percentages add up to the same percentage, around 40%, that was in my original poll, which shows that this does not matter. The sample size does not matter. You can expand or contract it, and you're still going to get the same percentages, which is also a very good indicator of this poll being accurate. But still, 28% of players answering this poll said that they were false banned. Adding the option only explained around 32% of the total number of players who are false banned. 2/3 of the players who are false banned are still claiming that they were false banned and were not unbanned after. So, what exactly is going on here? Now, first of all, my poll has a few issues, which I'm going to touch on pretty in depth here. Now, first of all, I am sampling my player base, my viewer base on Twitter, which could skew the data a little bit one way or the other. I'm not 100% sure if that's going to skew it up or down in terms of the people being false banned, but it is the case that we are strictly or mostly looking at people who follow me on Twitter. However, that also is mitigated by the fact that there is a large number of retweets, especially on the second post, which shows that this is not 100% my fan base. Obviously, it's a percentage of it, but it's not 100%. So I think that's a very minor factor affecting the legitimacy of my poll. However, a much more major factor, which could explain a lot more of the increased percentage than what I was expecting, is the fact that people will actually lie on these polls. Now, I don't necessarily think that a majority of people answering yes and continuing to say yes were lying, but I do believe that there is a percentage of the people responding who were just saying that their ban was false, even though they know themselves that their ban was correct, because they want to show that they're innocent. But I was very specific in the poll, and I said, you don't have to lie here because the polling is anonymous. But I think that that definitely mitigated a lot of the people trying to lie. But I do think that there is a large percentage of people in this community who will go to extreme lengths, like convince themselves that they're not cheating in order to lie. And these players will go to extreme lengths to do that. So I don't necessarily trust this data. I do not think it's accurate. However, I do think that there is a small, very small percentage of players who were truly false banned. And I'm going to be talking about the situation here. But I don't know if the numbers are really to be trusted. I just can't tell. There's a lot of people who will just go to extreme lengths to lie. And that's unfortunately the situation we're in. So we cannot get accurate numbers. Now in this section, I'm going to talk about the different reasons why players have been false banned or think that they've been false banned on Hypixel. Now obviously this poll only looks at bans in total. It does not look at mutes, it does not look at specific types of bans, so it does not look at watchdog bans versus staff bans versus, chat offense bans versus etc, 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 and some people think that what they've been false banned for should not be false banned, so they think that their ban was false. For example, if you say something in chat that gets you banned, and you think you should not be banned for saying this in chat, then you're going to say the ban was false, which skews the data even more. But I don't think that once again, can account for all of the increased, extremely high number of people who say that they're being false banned. So there is still a percentage of players who were false banned who have no idea why they were false banned and were. Another class of ban would be someone who believes that they were false banned, but actually got banned for a legitimate reason. So that would be a player who basically had a mod in their mods folder, or did something in game that, the staff members didn't like, but did not realize that what they were doing was against the rules. Now, there's been many mistakes in the past where people have downloaded mods, which actually do get them banned on Hypixel. That's why most mods are use your own risk. And there could even be other things, like a broken mouse, which would cause double-clicking, which would perhaps ban you on the anti-cheat, or a CPU speed-up, which could trigger timer checks, which would ban you on the anti-cheat. So there's lots of different factors there that could get you banned without you knowing that what you did was actually a bannable offense. It's also the case that sometimes people's accounts get hacked, and your account is your responsibility, so people would claim that their ban is false, obviously, however, they were still banned. And I think that this can actually explain the majority of people who are saying that they were false banned. However, I honestly do not think that it can explain all of it. Now, although I do not believe that these factors can explain all of it, I do believe that it can explain most of it. However, once again, there are still very rare true false bans. The majority of bans that appear to be false are not actual true false bans, but can be explained by other factors, which I believe is skewing the data. Now, obviously, before I get into this topic, Hypixel's not out to get you. They're not out to false ban you, because that creates outrage from the player base, and it would obviously be a negative thing for Hypixel to want to do positively. Obviously, these are probably mistakes most of the time, and there are two types of bans, as I said before. There's watchdog bans and staff bans. Now, my first instinct says that there's probably a greater percentage of the true false bans that are, in fact, staff false bans. That's simply because humans are not a machine. They're not the same as watchdog. Watchdog is a machine. It has lines of code, and it can make very accurate judgments about whether or not someone is cheating most of the time. Now, obviously, I've talked about watchdog in the past before, and how it, doesn't ban players very fast and stuff of that sort, so there are problems with it. But generally, my first instinct was that the staff would be less accurate. But then I realized that Hypixel holds its staff members generally to a pretty high standard, and I could definitely see staff members getting demoted if they false banned players. And that's the thing that convinced me that the majority, like 99.9% of the people saying that they were false banned in my poll, probably were not actually truly false banned. And I think that their bans were false from their perspective, but from the server's perspective, they were not false, and it can be explained by a variety of other factors. Now, once again, I am not saying that false bans do not exist. True false bans, they do exist. However, they're not as prevalent as people probably think they are, because people will call their bans false for a variety of reasons, which do not always necessarily to be actually false. So what's going to end up happening is when you do polls like this, you are going to get skewed data, which is what I was expecting. Basically, the conclusion here is that I don't actually know how many false bans there really are, but I do know how many people think their bans are false, and I can see why people say Hypixel false bans all the time, because everyone thinks their ban is false. So, it's a really confusing topic, because there's a lot of different factors that come into it, but the truth of the matter is, the truth about Hypixel false bans is that I do not believe that they're prevalent as people probably say they are. However, they still happen, because it happens on every server, whether it be a mistake, an error in Watchdog, or whatnot. It does happen on every server. For Watchdog, you would have some weird glitch in the way the packets were being sent, and that could false ban you. For a staff, they could, it could just be a mistake. So there's lots of different factors there that could actually get you really false banned. And I'm sure people who are watching this, I'm sure there's at least a few people who are watching this who were truly false banned from Hypixel. But you also have to consider the possibility that you weren't actually false banned. Like, if you actually look at what you were banned for and why you were banned, if you don't know, check your mods folder. If you still don't know, check your mouse to see if you're double clicking. If you still don't know, make sure you don't have CPU speedups happening. There's lots of different factors that can cause you to be false banned, and not all of them them are things that are completely under your control, unfortunately. And Hypixel's not going to unban you because anyone can technically lie about that. But overall, I don't think that false bans are as prevalent as people say they are. I think false bans are incredibly rare, and people say that they're common, but they're actually incredibly rare. And those are the reasons why. So this has been the truth about Hypixel false bans, and I will see you guys later. Peace out.